So thank you all for joining. We are so happy and honored that you're here with us today. Sideless Education is grateful to have you as always. I'm Valentina Gonzalez, and today we're sharing a webinar called Supporting Literacy at Home, 7 Steps for Parents. This is really relevant these days, especially because of remote learning, but it's actually applicable all of the time. Even when we're in a traditional classroom, we want our parents to know how to support their child's education. Before we get started, I'd like to give you a few reminders about how we run our webinars. So we are recording our webinar, and for those of you who have registered, in about 24 to 48 hours, you'll receive an email with a link to the recording and the slides as well. If you are viewing live with us right now, feel free to chat with the panelists and everyone that's participating. So in the chat feature, you want to be sure you navigate to where it says all panelists and attendees so everyone can see what you type. And if there is some type of Zoom failure, you can meet us back up at sideletseducation.com, and we'll give you more information about how to continue learning with us in the webinar. For those of you who enjoy tweeting and sharing information on Twitter, we use the hashtag SideletesEdChat, and we'll put that in the chat feature so that you remember what our hashtag is. And if you're on YouTube right now, you can also chat with us in the live chat feature as well. Thank you all for joining us, and I'm going to hand it over now to Anna Mattis, who will introduce our speakers.
Good. Thank you so much, Valentina. Now, several of you are already familiar with Natalia Heckman. She did a webinar for us back on April 29th about scaffolded paragraph frames. That was just so wonderful and popular. And so she's back again. Now, if this is your first time with Natalia, know that she was an ESL teacher, an ESL coach, an ESL specialist. And now we have her on board here at Sidelets, where she's spearheading the training series along with Allison Hand called Moving Else Forward. And we're moving else forward in reading and writing, on the Telpass, on STAR. And so look for announcements, and we'll be talking a little bit about that at the end of the webinar as well. Valentina is going to be hosting Jordan Greer. Jordan Greer is a former ESL teacher and now language coach. That's in Frisco ISD. If you are outside of Texas, know that Frisco is in the Dallas area, north of it. And it's a district that we work very heavily with. Frisco is a wonderful district that utilizes a lot of Sidelet strategies throughout their foreign language, their ESL, their content program. And Jordan is someone that actually works with a lot of those teachers, especially in building their capacity to work with ESL strategies. Another way you might have heard of Jordan recently is if you are a subscriber to our Sidelets blog, this last Wednesday, Jordan co-authored a piece that is actually about today's webinar. And so we'll bring that up at the end as well to make sure that you have the links to both. So I'm going to pass it over to Natalia, and she's going to tell us a little bit more about her collaboration with Jordan.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with Jordan today, and we will be talking about supporting literacy at home. We will look at our book, 7 Steps to a Language-Rich Interactive Classroom, from a perspective of a parent. But before we start, I want to give you a little bit of a background. I was introduced to Jordan by John Sidelets, who learned of a 7 Steps for Parents initiative that was happening in Frisco ISD. And at the same time, I was building a training on exactly the same topic. So we thought it was a great opportunity for us to collaborate and put our heads together and share the content with parents and educators using this free webinar platform. So I'm so excited that Jordan is here to share some implementation tips with us today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, and thank you to everyone who's joining. I know for many of us, it's a day off, so thank you for choosing to spend your time with us this morning.
All right, now, before we jump into literacy per se, I want to take a quick perspective or take a look at our expectations of ourselves as parents, because we can be harsh on ourselves. We have this perfect image of what our homeschooling, what we would like for it to see happening at our home right now. But I think it's important to remember that we're not homeschooling. we are crisis schooling. And I cannot tell you how many times my face and my husband's face look just like that when we're trying to help our own kids with homework, or with some, with some homework that they're supposed to do for their classes online in high school and at a college level. So we're not dealing with literacy, but we are first-hand familiar with all the online issues of a quarantine parent. So we do not expect, I want to be clear on that, so we do not expect parents to magically transform into stellar teachers and become or start acting as educators to their children. All we can do is do the best we can under the circumstances. So we're just sharing tips today.
Yes, I know our new normal is challenging. I'm a parent as well, navigating all of this. So I know, especially for parents that are working full time and trying to take care of their children, it's been a challenge. But I do think as educators, it's given us a unique opportunity to be intentional with reaching out to our families and supporting them. And I'd love to hear from y'all in the chat if y'all have reached out to families, or how y'all are trying to build relationships with your families during this time.
Absolutely. This school to home, our two-way connection is so important right now. And we hear all the time about school districts going above and beyond to help the parents, to support the parents. So that's why when we found out that the Frisco ISD is doing things with or implementing 7 steps for parents, we absolutely had to have Jordan with us to share her experiences.
Yeah, so the language coaches in Frisco ISD have been collaborating through all of this and working together and learning from each other. And we realized how vital it was to support our teachers as they were creating these lessons and encouraging them to still implement the 7 steps the best that they could. We've grown our teachers' capacity with this all year long, and we didn't want that to stop just because we were doing e-learning. And it's really helped our teachers see the value of these steps, not only for the ESL students, but for all of their students.
So 7 steps to a language-rich classroom. If you're a teacher, you might be familiar with this approach, but what is this? What are the 7 steps? 7 steps was written, it's a book written for a classroom teacher, and it's a procedure, it's a process with 7 distinct components that, working together, help any teacher of any content, of any grade level, create the environment that is the most favorable for language production and for increasing participation and engagement and interaction in the classroom. Now, it's not written for parents. So Jordan, why did you think it was so important in our current situation to share 7 steps with the parents?
So after we had set an expectation with our teachers to try to embed these 7 steps, first of all, I wanted the parents to understand what the teachers were being so intentional about. They've been including visuals and sentence stems and vocabulary and structured writing situations. And so I wanted parents to appreciate all that work that teachers were putting in, and to understand how important it was to, hopefully not overlook those pieces in their e-learning plans. And like we've mentioned, we're not expecting that the parents are the teachers or that they know exactly how to do all of this. And so we wanted to support them, and we know that their role through all of this is really vital to student success. And so by partnering with parents and providing them some suggestions about what this could look like at home, it was just our hope that it would make our return back to school a little smoother.
Absolutely. So that continuity between home, and we have 2 months of summer ahead of us. It's so important. It's absolutely crucial. Now, so let's look at 7 steps at home. Now, as a classroom teacher, I'm looking at this and I see, okay, there are 2 angles to it. There's a language production angle that I'm going to be focusing on. There's also an participation and engagement angle. So some of the steps will not apply to your home setting. So Jordan, what steps do you think we can focus on to explore further steps that will target literacy at home?
Yes, so like you said, not every step works nicely in the home. There's not a lot of randomizing and rotating happening in your living rooms, but steps 1 and 2 can really naturally be used at home. And I think step 5 is so important as students are learning new vocabulary and new academic content. And should this continue, as we go back in the fall, I think 1, 2, and 5 are so helpful for the home.
Absolutely. So we are going to start with step 1. And step 1 says, teach students what to say when they don't know what to say. And this is an anchor chart that's an example of what it will look like in a classroom. So we're scaffolding the answers. We're helping students to produce language, even if they don't really specifically know the answer to the question that you asked. So how can parents implement certain aspects of this concept at home?
So I know, as I said, I'm a parent, and there's been times I've asked my kids questions and I get the I don't know or the shoulder shrug. And I think in an attempt to help, sometimes parents might just give their kid the answer then, or even get frustrated with that. And so if we can guide parents to not accept I don't know, but rather hold their children accountable for their learning and maybe solicit their answers with some of these things that we're providing here, it really does help children start to advocate for themselves and take ownership of their learning. And if they'll practice this in the safety of their home, they might be more inclined to continue this when we're back in the classroom.
All right, step 2, have students speak in complete sentences. And I think this is one of the most essential concepts in the entire approach, entire 7 steps approach. When I do trainings, when we go to different school districts and follow up with coaching, and I ask teachers, what is one step that you thought was the most beneficial to your classroom? So most of the teachers, or many of the teachers, say, I focused on step 2 and I saw some changes in my classroom immediately. So Jordan, how can parents help their children to answer in complete sentences and focusing on that sentence structure? What can we do at home?
So, we know that students tend to write the way that they speak. And so as children are progressing from listening to speaking to reading to writing, it really does start with the way that they're speaking. So I think it's imperative that we encourage students to speak in complete sentences, and educating our parents and encouraging them to model this for their kids is important. And I think, even if that's happening in their home language, it's still showing them sentence structure. So our teachers have done an exceptional job of embedding sentence stems into their lesson plans in all content areas. And that really does support language learners and encourages them to maybe even use academic vocabulary that they wouldn't say naturally. If you set up the stems in a way that they're being encouraged to use harder, more advanced language. And this can happen when parents are supporting their children with e-learning plans, but also just in their casual conversations. So where a teacher might have some kind of a conversation about a book, a family could do that when they're reading a book, or even if they're watching one of their favorite TV shows. It's an opportunity to speak together and practice their sentence structure.
I absolutely love your examples of a sentence stem here, Jordan. And I think for me as a parent, I may not necessarily know even what it is until I just saw it now. And I'm going to say, okay, so if I get a one word answer from my child, I can rephrase it or I can repeat it so my child would hear what it would sound like, or what would it be if I said it as a complete sentence. Now, in a classroom, we call it recasting. We hear an answer and the answer may be somewhat correct, but we want to focus on the language. So we repeat it and we frame it a certain way. So we focus more on the language development, the sentence structure. So here, I think this is a great opportunity for parents to carry on a conversation and let the kids hear what a complete sentence should sound like. And it doesn't matter in English or in the home language. All right, step 5. Now, visuals. Visuals in support of vocabulary development. Now, as teachers, we plan visuals ahead of time and we strategically place them throughout the lesson to support our content if we want certain words learned throughout the unit. But we also use visuals to increase comprehension. Now, there is a dual coding theory that it really helped me understand why we need to see a picture of a certain word. According to the dual coding theory, in order for me as an English learner to anchor a word in a long-term memory, it really helps to have it represented in linguistic or language-based and non-linguistic means. So for example, if my mom says a word, or if somebody points out the word in a book, or if I trace the word in print with my finger, this is all language-based. Now, when I see a picture, that helps me make that connection between the sound and the print and creates that visual memory for me. It's so helpful. It's really anchors or solidifies not just understanding of my word, but also helps me to remember it. So are there any tools that parents can use at home to help with visuals?
Yes, so I totally agree that especially if a student is a visual learner, they're going to need that visual to help understand a new concept. So obviously we know that Google can be a best friend for that, but I also wanted today to share this website Kiddle, which is kind of the kid-friendly version of Google. And this just kind of makes sure that what you're pulling up is always family appropriate. And so Kiddle.co works a lot like Google. You can type in whatever you were needing into the search bar. And then if you click on images right underneath it, then it would just pull up a whole bunch of pictures rather than a bunch of websites. And so we use this in our classrooms often when we're researching and doing things like that. And so it's a great way that parents can feel a little more comfortable searching for an image to help their student and know that it'll be appropriate.
That's such a great tip. Now, I wish I knew about this when I was teaching high school, because I can tell you that I would feel much more comfortable when my high school kids go to Google and pull up images on their Google image search. We're about to share some activities that are, some of them are from our book, 7 Steps to Language Rich Classroom, and others are just the tips that are found, or they're based on the language acquisition theory. But you will notice that many of the activities that Jordan and I will share are conversation based. So here, the reason we are looking for ways to increase that language production through conversation is because our children who are learning or acquiring a foreign language through communication, first, usually they develop the ability to speak or to listen, to understand, and to speak. So, and that is oracy. But many of our parents are expressing concerns about the children's ability to read and write in English, or about literacy. So, Jordan, what are some things that you hear parents say? What are some concerns we should address?
So, all parents at home are trying to figure out this e-learning, and they all, are wanting to support, they're wanting to know how they can help, but we know that they're not teachers. And so, one thing when I reached out to parents and shared some ideas, they were just, oh, I hadn't thought about that, and that does seem so easy, I could do that, and they were asking for more. So I knew that we were onto something, by reaching out. But a lot of parents express a concern about students getting behind after being out for 2 months, and maybe even being surrounded by their native language rather than English. So parents of English learners, they just don't want their kids to regress during this time.
This is a valid concern, but I think the important thing for us to remember here is that we know from research that literacy skills transfer between languages. So if you are a parent who is more comfortable speaking to the child or doing the activities with the child in the home language, it's not just safe, it's 100% beneficial for your child to develop maybe the basics of literacy in the home language, because that will be a bridge for them to acquire literacy in English. It doesn't have to be literacy teaching or basics. Even if you take this time to boost their language, through conversations, through reading to them, all of this it's really helpful. So I want to ease your worries about this home language, or learning the home language, or hearing the home language, or being read to in the home language. It's not going to harm your child's later on acquiring English or learning to read and write in English. All right, so I think we're ready to go into the activities, right? So we're starting with expert novice. And if you're a teacher and if you have a book, we have a page number for you there in the corner. If you're a parent, it's just some of the activities that Jordan and I selected because we thought they could be easily implemented at home, or a parent and a child could play through them at home. And we selected the ones that do not require much planning. We can do it in the car, we can do it in the line waiting for something. So the first one is expert novice. And what it does, it prompts children to generate questions over a topic. So you can use a visual or you can use a topic, and you would acquire a role of an expert. So you would be answering questions, and the child will be a novice. So he will be creating, or they will be creating a series of questions over something. So it's important to pick a topic which is of high interest to your child. For example, my son, when he was little, he used to know everything about trains. He could talk about trains continuously, days on end. But what I would do here, I would really focus on having those questions correctly structured. And if I'm the one answering the questions that my child is asking me, I would make sure that I'm answering complete sentences, just like Jordan mentioned earlier. So it's a more or less conversation, but we are holding our kids accountable for building those sentences correctly and answering them correctly.
Yeah, and I think this is such a great way to boost children's confidence, allow them to practice with language that they're comfortable in. And I think it would be great, this summer, if we're going to get to enjoy some fun experiences, going to the zoo, things that they just had firsthand experience in, would be a great time to try this activity as well.
Absolutely. Now, the next one we wanted to share with you is called Freeze and Speak. Now, Freeze and Speak in a classroom, how would that work? We would have students look at an issue or at a topic from opposing points of view and generate whys behind their opinion. Now, if I'm in a house, if I'm at home with my children, I don't want to pick anything serious. So I want to keep it light. I could say, for example, okay, and using the sentence stems at the bottom, I'm going to say, I think SpongeBob should not be friends with Patrick. So my child and I would have to think together to generate ideas why they should not be friends. But then I would have to, in a classroom, we would say freeze, and we would switch partners or switch sides, and have the students to generate answers or whys or reasons from an opposite perspective. So with my child, I would do the same thing. I would say, okay, so let's look at it differently now. And I'm going to say, SpongeBob should be friends with Patrick, and here are certain whys. So this is a critical thinking skill, but also we are framing it in a more complex sentence structure that if I can practice this at home, maybe during the summer in a playful situations, once my kids go back to school, I think it will be 100% helpful for them as they move into the classroom activities.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you could easily use this at home, soliciting their opinions on who should do the chores or what you're going to have for dinner tonight or what game you should play as a family. It can really just weave naturally into what's going on in your home. And like you mentioned, opinion writing and persuasive writing is something they do at school. So being able to kind of talk through different points of view at home is going to help them when we go back to school.
All right, and the last one is somebody wanted but so. I think this is a summarization frame that Jordan, you did share with your district parents. So can you tell us more about this?
Yeah, so this is a great strategy if you're having kids orally retell or if they've been asked to write out a summary of a story. And this is one that we use in the classroom a lot. And one reason I think it's so great is that some students might not even know where to start when they're asked to do a retell, or they might have way too many examples or way too many details, and it doesn't stay structured. So by following this structure called Somebody, Wanted, But, So, it really does give a succinct summary, which is a skill that all students are being asked to do in the classroom. So in this example, they're summarizing the somebody would be the big bad wolf, wanted the pigs for dinner, but they hid in the brick house, so he went hungry.
100% useful skill for high school as well. Now, we're going to close with 3 little tips that are literacy tips for our quarantine parents. So Jordan, would you tell us about reading partners?
Yes, so reading together can be so much more fun than having to go read by yourself. Sometimes it is nice to cuddle up and read on your own, but if you can read, with a brother or sister, or if you're lucky enough to have your grandparents quarantined with you, this is a wonderful opportunity to spend quality time together. You can read picture books, you can track the text. If you're reading in your home language, that is perfectly fine as well. But reading and tracking the text is going to promote word recognition and those directionality skills. So even if you're the older sibling helping the younger, it's just a great way to spend quality time together.
Now, if you're watching TV together, turn on the captions, and this will immediately increase the language connection between the print and the speech. So this is one of the useful things to do as you watch TV as a family. Reading in moments.
All right, so really reading is everywhere, but it's really only reading if you're tracking the text. And what that means is kind of, with your eyes, paying attention to where the text is and directionality. So you can capture moments in your home where you can work with your kids, and it can be as simple as looking at what's on a cereal box, or if you're making a recipe together, just taking the opportunity in real life moments to boost reading and boost their vocabulary as well.
This concept actually comes from Carol Salva's book, Boosting Achievement, and she tells us that tracking the text was one of the most useful strategies that she used with her students who are new to the country, and they were secondary students, but continuously tracking the text as she read along with them was one of the tips that Carol suggests. Now, pause, draw, and label. It's a fun activity that incorporates a little bit of writing along with TV watching or drawing if you have children younger than the reading age. So if we are pausing TV just for a second, or you can let kids pick the frame that they want to focus on, ask them to draw a picture, and then after they draw with as many details as they can, label as many items in the picture using the vocabulary that they already know. So this is a quick pause, draw, and label. Now, Jordan, before we close, would you tell us a little bit more about the article that is posted on our Sidelets blog?
Yes, so the article that I collaborated on with some other language coaches in Frisco just kind of walks through some of the ways that the teachers have embedded 7 steps in their e-learning. And it also kind of talks about how I reached out to parents and the way that I structured kind of the initial rollout of telling them about the 7 steps. And the presentations that I created are on the blog, and y'all are welcome to use those or use them as inspiration to then make it your own. We intentionally sent it out to our parents, sending it to all the parents and not just our ESL kids, because we know these are great for all kids. And we also chose to send it out in 3 parts because we wanted it to be chunked. We know that some of our parents are English learners themselves, and so I did not want to dump a bunch of information that might not, ever really get read. And so keeping it small and in chunks, I think was really helpful. And I included my email address and that kind of thing in my presentation so that if parents had questions or wanted to know more, they had my contact there. So I hope that the article is helpful to you guys, either as teachers or as parents, and maybe gives you or encourages you to reach out to your families if you haven't already, to make sure that they're understanding the 7 steps.
It's a fun read, a lot of insights on implementation. That's all we have for you today over literacy and over different ways to support parents to promote and support literacy at home. So I hope you found some of them useful and usable in your home setting.
Good job. Okay, so we actually don't have any questions for you ladies, but there were a lot of comments. It's going to be really neat to go back and read the chat. I've been trying to save a lot of the apps and things that people have mentioned they've been using to reach out to parents. And so it'll be nice to have a good compilation of that we can share with everyone. You have on the slide in front of you, you have everybody's contact information just on Twitter. So if you want to go ahead with one, Natalia, we can give our viewers some more information. If you want to go ahead, advance a slide. That's what I'm saying, right? There we go. There you go. If you join us on Twitter, the first and third Tuesday, you guys, I can't speak today. I'm so sorry. Friday, first and third Tuesday of every month from 7 to 7:30, we have a Sidelets Ed chat that is hosted by our wonderful Valentina Gonzalez, and we're always changing the topics on that. And if you go forward one more, we're going to let you know about some other things we have coming up. Yes, so I hope you have a lovely Memorial Day weekend, but right when you come back on Tuesday, the 26th, we'll be joined by Dr. Patricia Morales again. This will be a session that's all in Spanish, but don't worry, Valentina and I will be there to pretend that we understand what's going on, but answer any English questions that we have for you on, this is on optimizing literacy skills during the quarantine. And then towards the end of that week on the 28th, Sally Barnes, who is one of our LOTE consultants and a current Spanish teacher in Katy ISD, is going to be leading us on a webinar on steps 6 and 7 of these 7 steps. So if these 7 steps are new to you and you want to hear a little bit more about them, join us on that Thursday, the 28th. Step 6 is on having students speak in structured conversations, and step 7 is structured reading and writing activities. So we'll really be delving into those two. And then finally on June 2nd, Dr. Monica Lara is going to be telling us in Spanish again about her dictado, which is part of the book Toma la Palabra. And I think those are going to round out our webinars. Now for upcoming conferences, these are conferences that you will have to go to our website, sign up for and register for and pay for, but they are fantastic. And we're going to be doing a number of them in June. The first one's coming up also next week, the 27th and 28th, are with Adrienne Mendoza doing sheltered instruction and math, both for the elementary and the secondary. And then the following week, June 3rd and 5th, Dr. Michelle Izquierdo will be doing a conference based on her book, Pathways to Greatness for ELL Newcomers. And again, you can get all the information for that on our website, sideletseducation.com, and you'll be able to register there. And I think that might be all that we have for you today. Yes, there's our contact information. It's been such a pleasure being with all of you this week. We hope you have a lovely, wonderful, safe Memorial Day weekend. And I'm signing off. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you so much,
guys.
Yes, thank you, Jordan. Thanks for being here. And we hope you all take a chance to read our blog. It's a good one.
Yes, and thank you for joining us as always. Bye, everyone.